Welcome everybody back to Let's Talk Toku. Now, I know that I promised when we had Jason Arvey on a few episodes back that we were going to have another explosive episode with a Power Ranger alumni. And we got the best, my favorite Power Ranger on this episode. I'm talking about Karan Ashley.
Woo! I'll pay you later. Yeah! I'll cheer for myself.
How's it going?
It's great. It's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. We're filming these chunks of episodes during the quarantine, so it's a little bit easier to, get a hold of you guys.
Yeah, it's like we're all stuck at home. There's no excuse. Like, people can go, oh, I'm busy. I'm booked that week. You can pretty much find us.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. This is Let's Talk Toku. We talk about tokusatsu, and we've had a few guests on here, that know their stuff when it comes to like Godzilla. A lot of the other shows like Power Rangers is from Super Sentai. You probably already know all of this. And
yeah.
We just kind of want to, jump in and kind of get everywhere because Power Rangers is a form of tokusatsu, and it's a very important one because I wouldn't be here. I think most of you guys wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, your show and everything that you guys did back then to really kick it off here in America.
I know, it's so crazy. Like, I got into it obviously later. We didn't watch it when we were actually on the show, but when we got off, I had an opportunity to meet some of the original actors from, the Japanese version. And I was just like, how did they look at that show and then go, I'm going to make it into this show? Like, it's just crazy. Like, the creativity, you got to give it up to Saban for that creative vision.
Right. I mean, look where it took everybody today. Like, it's so cool to see how it worked like that. And it just hasn't really been, remodeled the same way. Like, they tried other shows, but Power Rangers is just so powerful.
It just worked. I mean, it's crazy to me that I always say it's crazy that this many years later, I mean, what are we, 26, almost 27 years later, we're still talking about Power Rangers. It's still relevant. That doesn't happen. So it's insane.
It continues to push those boundaries. It continues to open up itself to new generations, like thankfully with like DVD and Blu-ray and Netflix even. This show is accessible to everybody. Yeah,
it was funny because we started doing Comic-Cons probably like 12 years ago. And it was kind of in phases. Like, first when we came on, people were super excited to meet us because they hadn't had an opportunity to meet us. It had been like 10 plus years since we were on the show. And so people were super hyped. But there were only about 4 or 5 shows that kind of would request us and we'd go and whatever. And then it came out on DVD. And so those requests went from like 5 shows to like 10 shows. And then it came out on Netflix, and then we were just booked. Like, we've been doing it probably 5 or 6 years where we go almost every weekend. I mean, and there's hundreds of us now. There's so many Power Rangers, but everyone goes and do all these shows across the world, and people are so into it. And I think for me, it was shocking because, we were on the show. They were like, oh, you're the #1 kids show in the world. And I always kind of joked because I was like, what does that mean? Like, how do we know this? How can we verify that? But you go to a place like, Indonesia, they don't speak the language. You don't speak their language. They don't speak your language, and they can sing the theme song word for word. So it's like, then you go, okay, it was the #1 kids show in the world. It's crazy. I believe them. I finally believe them.
It's funny. It's crazy. You brought up how many there are today because back then, Mighty Morphin, most of us are familiar. Mighty Morphin came from 1 season of Super Sentai, which was the 16th Zyuranger, and it turned itself into not 1, but 3 seasons and a movie.
Right. They stretched that stock footage out until it broke.
Right? Like I think it was when they brought in the Alien Rangers and they could finally, kind of get new fresh footage with the 2 seasons that came after Zyuranger. Like, you could really see everybody just like, yes, put in as much of it as we can. Let's go.
I think it was. I know by season 3, when we started shooting season 3, they didn't really have any other footage. Like, they were just like, we're out. But it was funny because the stunt team was super excited because they got to shoot a lot of the action and got to, like, we almost had like the chains release. They were able to create without the restraints of having it to match Japanese footage or make it make sense. It was like, I felt like they were kind of in this constant, like, wheel or this game of trying to, they're trying to play Tetris, make it all fit together. And so I know season 3, everybody was really happy, and we just come off of the movie. We were, everybody was shooting a lot more action, So it's crazy, though. I think that I just give it up to the teams, because it isn't until now that you kind of step back and you really appreciate what they were doing. And I just knew we worked constantly. We'd go into work, it'd be dark. We'd leave home, it was dark. So it was like you were just working. And there was always 2 teams. There was first unit, which was us, and then there was second unit, which was the stunt team, and it just never ended. So it's crazy, but it's so cool to kind of step back and look at it now and appreciate all the hard work and all the hundreds of people that were working on the show.
Really makes it just kind of fly by.
Yeah, it did. I tell people all the time, like, that was like about a year and a half of my life. I did season 2, 3, and we did the movie. And it literally was like a blink, but we did so much in that time. Like, it was unheard of. Like, you just don't work that hard in Hollywood. I went and did a commercial, and it was like easy breezy. Like, everything has been easy breezy compared to the Power Rangers schedule.
So let's move into how you became a Power Ranger, because you didn't come in when the show kicked off. You came in around the 2nd season when a few of the original cast departed, and thanks to the ingenuity and the creativity of how the show was basically set up, Zordon just said, all right, you're the new Power Ranger.
Right? It was crazy, because honestly, I don't know if I was just the only one, but I had just literally graduated high school like the month before. So I didn't know much about Power Rangers, but that was only because it hit really big throughout my senior year of high school. And I was just trying to get out of high school. But there was my friend called me and said, there's this ad in the newspaper. It's a kid's show. She's like, you'll be perfect for it. She knew all about it. And she was like, look, you got to go. You have to be either a martial artist, a gymnast, or a dancer. At the time, I thought we were joining the cast. I think everyone who was auditioning, we had no clue that 3 beloved actors had left the show. So I went in thinking, they want a teenager, I'm a teenager. They want someone who can dance, I can dance, And luckily, I was the right age, the right time. And I mean, it was a matter of 4 days. Like, it was the craziest audition I'd ever gone to. We went in, and there was literally a line wrapped around this building. I waited for hours to get in there. I finally got in there, and it was like 30 seconds, like, impress me in 30 seconds. And luckily I did, Yeah. And it was so funny. It was like that total, like, where you go and audition for someone and they're totally like, they don't smile, they barely look at you. It was that total thing. Mm-hmm. But I did something that Katie Wallen liked, and later that afternoon she said, can you come back and audition, and I'm going to videotape you this time. So it went from like thousands to maybe like 100. There were still a ton of people there. And it's funny because I remember seeing Steve and I remember seeing Johnny. Like, for some reason they stood out to me.
Of course, look at
we just went in. Yeah. And I went in, I did my audition. This time they were able to play music for me, because before I had to they were like, dance. I just had to dance. They didn't have a radio. They didn't have anything. And so this time I was able to bring music. I was able to do my audition the way that I wanted to. They videotaped it. And then that was it. And I went home, and I just was kind of like, wow, that's crazy. And a couple days went by and I didn't hear anything. So I thought maybe I didn't get it, And I just remembered that I got a phone call super early in the morning, and a friend of mine woke me up and said, Power Rangers, they're on the phone. They want to talk to you. And I'm like, all I remember is I woke up and I was like flying through the air. I should have known right then I was going to be a Power Ranger, because I don't even remember getting out of bed. I just remember like flying through the air, and the phone was in my hand, and they said, can you fly out tomorrow? And it was a super fast process. And they were like, we're going to fly you to LA. You're going to audition in person this time. And I was like, absolutely. I couldn't wait. And I did. And we literally auditioned for that morning, the whole day. Like, we went in by ourselves, and then they put us in a group. And lo and behold, it was me, Johnny, and Steve. They grouped us together. And so at that moment, I knew, like, we were group number one. I was like, okay, they like us. And I just remember Steve saying, guys, this is our job to either get or it's our job to lose. And I'll never forget that. And I was like, he's absolutely right. But we actually had to go in, do our audition, and we did it in front of each other. Like, I actually saw what they did, and I just was like blown away because Johnny was like flipping through the air, and Steve was like this martial arts champion, like kicking like across the floor.
And you're over there just.
Yeah, well, I was doing like this whole hip hop thing, and they had told us, like, back then it was like hip hop. You were like, you know, tumbling on the floor. You were doing stuff. So I just added a lot of that stuff in there. I was kicking, and I did. They asked me if I could add some punches and kicks, and I did. I totally add some punches and some kicks. And then right at the end, I did this like whole, like I looked at them and I did this like slow motion kind of like I'm getting ready to kick your ass kind of thing. And they were just like, yeah. And so at that point, I knew at least the producers liked me. So whether I got it or not, I knew that I had done all that I could. So, but literally we auditioned, and everyone auditioned. There was about 15 of us. And then they put us all in a room together, and we were waiting and talking, and you know, you kind of get to know people and you spend the whole day with them. And then they came in and they were like, okay, you got the part. And we were like screaming and crying. And then we heard other people crying, and it were the other people who didn't get the part. They were crying because they didn't get it, and we were crying because we did. And we were just like, oh God. It was the most awkward, best moment I've ever had in my life.
I used to work for American Idol, and so like I would have like that lanyard, and all the people that got said no to in like the cattle calls, they would just be like in the middle of tears, and they'd see me and they'd like, wait, one more time, here it is, here it comes. And I'm like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where I know like the other people that were there, because like, get this, Dan Southworth was a part of that audition. It was between Dan and Johnny, who kind of were going to be Adam. And and obviously Dan is an amazing martial artist. Johnny's an amazing martial artist. It really depended upon, you know, that moment, and it depended on the chemistry between the three of us. And I remember one part of the audition was they sat us at a table, and they were just sitting around, and they just talked to us. Like Shooky just had a conversation. He was like, what do you like to do? Oh, you just graduated from high school. Oh, and he wasn't talking about acting. He wasn't talking about the part or anything. He just wanted to talk to me, and he did the same thing to them. And I think it was really just a matter of who they felt could fit in with the other three, and also who fit in with each other, because we kind of were put on the show as a trio, you know, and we kind of were like, here are the new three Stone Canyon kids, and every time you'd see me, you'd see them. Like for 6 episodes, 10 episodes, we were always standing next to each other. So I think it was just one of those things.
It's funny too, because there's a lot of earlier Sentai and even some like later ones, like Ninja Storm got turned into, that started with a cast of 3. And I feel like when I was young, and then when I started to find out about Super Sentai and all the other tokusatsu, that your 3 entrants really did feel like a new team that then got added to the fold. And it was really kind of cool to see that sort of play out.
They did such a good job, I felt, with kind of ripping the Band-Aid off. Because, I mean, think about it. It was 3 very popular characters that were leaving. And they really just eased us in, you know? And at that time, you know, Walter, Twee, and Austin, they weren't on the show. Like, we never filmed with them. We never met them. They were using stand-ins, and they were using stock footage to kind of fill in the blanks of them not being there. But they really did kind of introduce us and kind of just wean us in and let you like us and show that we had hero qualities. Like, they actually really did a good job of kind of easing us into that. So I was happy about that, because that gave us the opportunity to try to win the kids over, which thankfully we did. Literally, we're like, don't watch the old show. We want you to be what you were in your audition. We don't want you to be, you know, the Yellow Ranger Twee. We don't want you to be her. We want you to be Karen. We want you to be completely different. So that was a good tip for us, because if they would have wanted us to kind of just pick up from where they left off, I think it would have been bad. So
it's funny that you bring up sort of chemistry. I'm a little jealous in this aspect because I've auditioned for Power Rangers a handful of times now, and I auditioned for the new movie that came out in 2017. And even like seeing like the special features on the disc, like they had the 5 that they eventually went with, and they did this with a bunch of them, but they all lined them up and they had them all look to the left, all look to the right, and well, I guess that's backwards. It's forwards for people watching.
Right.
Yeah, they always work with chemistry and everything, and the one role that I got really, really close to, and I was super happy because I was like, I'm going to be a part of like your legacy, I'm going to be part of like Twee's legacy, and like all the other Yellow Rangers was Yellow on Ninja Steel. I was that close.
That close. Oh, wow. But and then the thing is there's not a lot of male Yellow Rangers, so that would have just been, I totally get it. Yeah. I don't know what it is, though. I honestly, like, as an actor, you have to kind of just let it go. Like, that is the hardest thing you'll have to go through and accomplish, is that when you walk into that audition, it isn't even really about you. It's honestly about whatever they're feeling and whatever they've preconceived, like their preconceived notion of what this character is going to be.
Right.
And it's all a feeling. And I always say, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it almost killed all of, like, when you'd go to an audition, it's very competitive, just sitting in the waiting room or whatever. Now a lot of people audition on tape, but still, it's a very competitive industry. And it almost was great for me to realize this, because it killed all that inner competition that I had. Because I realized if it's meant for you, it's yours. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way in the world. I was, I wasn't a martial artist. I was a dancer. I had been working. I was in the group Crush, and I had been working as an actress since I was a kid. But literally, I mean, there were we found out later that over, 20, 30,000 people had auditioned for those parts, for just those 3 roles. And to me, it's like, it's part blessing, it's part destiny, it's part, you showed up in that moment and you gave them whatever feeling it was. And I remember talking to Shooky after about my audition and just said, why didn't you pick me? And he goes, you had the part the minute you walked in the door. You didn't have to, he said, all you needed to do was be able to speak, because you had it. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, you walked in, you were the only girl who walked in, and you just smiled. And when you smiled, your energy just lit up the room. And I go, that's our Yellow Ranger. That's who we need. And he goes, so then when you did all this other stuff, I was like, that's her. And everybody was like, it is, So I was just like, wow. So that it just goes to show you, the first impression is everything. And I just walked in like super confident, and just not confident that I had it. I just had confidence in who I was and what I could bring to the table. And I just said, you know what? It's my part to win, or it's my part to lose. So I'm going in there thinking I'm going to win it. So that's what people ask me all the time, like, for advice for auditioning. And I always tell them it's 90% confidence, 10% skill. You got to believe, if you don't believe, no one else will.
Definitely. That's really strong. I hope everyone listening will take something from that if they're a Ranger hopeful in the future, because who knows? You're watching this right now. They're doing Ryu Soldier, whatever they're planning on doing next, that could be yours. You could be one of those Rangers. You could join the long line of all these wonderful people. You
totally have the Ranger look, just so you know.
Hey, thank you. That means a lot.
You should keep auditioning. No, seriously. Like, I asked Dan, and Dan said he auditioned at like almost every single time. It took him 10 years, and he got it. Like, he had our audition.
If you had to guess, how old do you think I am?
24.
Thank you. I'm 27, but like, I have that young vibe, and I kind of keep that energy up. And I think I've been told every time I go in, they're like, that's what we want. That's maybe next time, but we'll see.
Well, think about it. I think, like, you're probably the same age Walter was when he was on the show. Like, Walter was, he was like the old veteran that had been, like, he'd been acting, he'd been working, and he'd been doing stuff, So, yeah, I would keep doing it until you just couldn't. But I've heard it from a lot of Rangers. A lot of Power Rangers said that they auditioned multiple times. And, it's like one of those things. Our situation was very weird. We didn't realize we were, replacing people, but that's why it happened so fast. But usually it's a very long process. So
I lived in LA for a couple of months when they were casting for Beast Morphers. And I did like some PMC interviews because I worked for a group called TokuNet. And I like was in the back and I got to beat them and I was like, oh, I stood no chance. But they're great. They're some of the nicest people I've met that, you know, just really work and mesh well together, and you can immediately see that. But
it's crazy because I always say, I don't know where these casting agents found the nicest people in the whole world. Like, where are you finding these decent people? Everyone is so sweet. They're so kind. And you know, it's really a family. We really act like we're brothers and sisters, and we really, like, we stop whatever we're doing. You know, every Power Morphicon, we sneak off and have a secret dinner, secret meeting, secret something. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a sorority I don't know. It's just a family that I love.
You guys hear that? Next PMC, we're meeting up at Chili's.
Yeah, right.
I had something really interesting that I kind of had rattled around in the back of my brain for a few years. With Power Rangers, I was born in the early 90s, so Power Rangers really for me has just been ever present in my life. And talking with Jason, he kind of put it into perspective of a way that I had thought about, but I never really had formulated it, you know, into like how it is. But superheroes are in almost every type of media now. Like, it is the most talked about, it is the most sensationalized, and like in terms of like, I want to become a superhero when I grow up, like you ask all these kids, and like back in the 90s, you know, maybe a handful would be like, I want to be like Superman. You know, Power Rangers comes out and everybody wants to be a Power Ranger, everybody wants to be a superhero. And now like you got Marvel, you got DC. How does it feel to have portrayed a character live action of color to these kids that had never seen something like that?
Oh man, it's so crazy because literally, I mean, I always talk about Comic-Cons only because I love them, because it's given us a chance to smell the roses. You know, we were on this show, we'd come in contact with kids, but we were working. It was a heavy work schedule. But now it's like we get to fall in love with the show again through your eyes, through the fans, you know, and that's one of the things that girls and boys will come up to us, or men and women come up to us and say, you changed my life. You changed my life because I had never seen someone that looked like me on TV, you know, and it was funny because I always talk about like me having the braids. I always talk about it very jokingly that I had to get them because they kept curling my hair every day. And I thought I'm going to be bald headed. Like I was like, they're going to make my hair fall out. But I mean, it was a hairstyle that I'd had in high school, and it was not a big deal to me. But now knowing what that did, like being an African-American girl, or being a girl who had braids, or being someone who looked completely different, and just exposed, you know, that's one of the things that I really love about Power Rangers is that it really gave every kid a superhero. It gave them a superhero that looked like them. It gave them someone directly to identify with. But I didn't get that until later, until I really started meeting fans and they really started telling me their stories. And it's just been such a blessing because I didn't even know. I mean, I knew that was happening, but I didn't know it'd have this lasting effect. I didn't realize that what I needed as a child, they still needed. And because we were younger adults and younger kids, it really gave kids something to aspire to, you know, and I love that Power Rangers is so like rated G with extra T's, and we were so squeaky clean, and we were picking up trash. I mean, we did everything right, but the whole world fell in love with these teenagers who every day wanted to do better and be better. And, it's just so cool to be able to say that I was a part of that and to go, wow, you were the first Black female teenager superhero ever. And I'm like, no one called me and told me that was happening. I wish I would have like been able to like, you know, but I think everything happens for a reason. And now it's sinking in, and now it's amazing. And now I've met so many people. And I mean, it's like we've shed tears, you know, and they've just shed, you know, and one thing I know is like not everybody had an easy childhood, and most kids had a very difficult childhood. but Power Rangers was able to be that group of friends that they hoped that they had. It was able to be that escape. And even now, like I've been talking to people on live and they say that they've been binge watching Power Rangers. They're stressed out about their finances and they're stressed out about where the world is going with this virus. But Power Rangers makes them happy. And so they watch it over and over again. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's such a blessing to even be a part of that in any kind of way, you know?
And I think a lot of people watching too would agree, like whether or not you enjoy Power Rangers, you know, obviously us as a kid, it's the number one thing to us. And a lot of us can still hold on to that today. But, you know, whether it's Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, even Ultraman, like whatever you guys watch, like it has a thing, it has like a way to like fix you inside. And I think only tokusatsu really kind of has that ability. Like, you know, like you can watch a soap opera and feel, you know, some sort of way, but tokusatsu just tickles you right in like the...
It does. It's like sunshine, like, you know, it's just a little bit of sunshine for your day, you know? And I mean, it's great. And it's funny because like years later, I'm sitting in the theater watching like Black Panther and I'm like, Wakanda forever. Like I remember I was screaming the whole way through that movie and I was just giddy and I was like, wow, so this is what they felt when they watch Power Rangers. It's that representation. It's so important, you know, but you know, Power Rangers has always been that show that has had every single race, every single kind of kid. The smart kid was made super popular, you know, the girl next door, the guy, the jock, the sassy girl. I mean, it was just like they were really smart in you know, trying to create every kid, not just one type of kid.
Definitely. And like where you say like a lot of kids watching would see themselves represented in these characters sometimes for a first time. Like for myself, obviously, you know, I see myself as like Steve Cardenas, that's me, I'm Rocky, woo, you know, but then I get to see all of his friends. And I think that helped open myself, and I know a lot of other kids growing up, to sort of accept other people for their differences. Because as a kid, it's not really sort of impacted on you until you start getting a little bit older and you start to see that. And I think holding on to Power Rangers as long as I did really did help kind of bridge a lot of those friendships. And I think a lot of people would agree that it's the ultimate, like, without having to like hit you over the head or say it, like it's just like, look at this, you can have all these friends and you can go kick and fight evil. Like, what's better than that?
Like there were so many unsaid lessons, but it was like we learned to just, we learned to be better in so many ways. I agree. I completely agree.
I told my girlfriend a couple days ago that I was going to be interviewing you for this, and she's just like, which one is that again? Because she's still relatively new. She like saw Power Rangers in, like, you know, now and then, and I was like, Yellow Ranger, you know, Mighty Morphin, and she's like, wait a minute, with like the braids, and I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, she's my favorite. Tell her I love her. So maybe when we're all done, I'll have her come in and just say hi if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Oh, see, all the sassy girls. I always say the sweet girl next doors, they were pink, but the sassy girls are the Yellow Ranger girls. I'm telling you. I said that at PMC. We were doing that all yellow panel, and all the girls, like all of us, they were like, you're absolutely right. So all the Yellow Rangers agree with that statement.
So we talked a little bit about Super Sentai, which Zyuranger was the sort of inciting season in Japan that had been on for 16 seasons at that time. And it made its way over here and became the phenomenon known as Power Rangers. So at what point did you realize or kind of understand that, oh my God, I'm taking this Japanese show that's already run its course, that's already had 51 episodes with this other amazing cast, and we're turning it into something completely different, but still the same?
Right. They told us that. I think when we first got on the show, they didn't want to let us watch it just because they were like, we don't want you to be influenced. We kind of want you to stay spontaneous, and they wanted us to kind of just be us and have no influence. And so we didn't get to see it, but I remember talking, they put us with Paulie, who was, you know, he's an amazing actor. He's an amazing person. But Paulie was kind of he wasn't our acting coach, but he would help run lines with us. He was on set with us that whole first week, just so that we knew, like, when they say stand on your mark, we knew what that meant, you know, and he just kind of was someone who was just helping us be comfortable, you know? And I remember he gave us the whole, like, you know, if you ever talk to Paulie, he played Bulk, he's like an encyclopedia. Like, if you ask him a question, it's not going to be as simple, just like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. He's going to give you the backstory and the other backstory. And so he gave us like this whole like soliloquy about what, you know, Super Sentai was and how it was a huge hit. And so we knew from him. But like I said, I didn't really know until we were doing a show, I think it was in Lexington, Kentucky. And the Super Sentai cast were going to be there. And so I got in touch with them. And I was like, at the time I was doing my own podcast called Uncensored Talk. And I was like, look, I really want to interview you guys. And they were like, well, they don't speak English. They only speak Japanese. And they'll have a translator. And I was like, that's fine. We'll make it work. Like, we'll just go with it. But it was just so cool meeting them. And I actually watched episodes because I was like, I need to know what they did. And I kept hearing how different it was. And man, was it different. It was so different. And
especially when it gets to the Yellow Ranger.
Yeah. And so all kinds of things made sense. Like, I was like, okay, so this is why, you know, it all kind of helped the American version make a little more sense for me. But I got it. I instantly got why people were attracted to this. Because, I mean, first of all, there's martial arts. There are these really cool kids running around saving the world, and even in their version. And then there were these crazy bad guys. Like, I mean, how would you not love something like this? Just the monsters were made out of any and everything. Like, the creativity that they had, I just don't even understand. Like, I wish I had that type of creativity in myself, you know. But it was just amazing. So I don't know. It's just so cool to see how it has just kept going there, but it's also kept going here, you know? It's just amazing to me. But it was funny because when we met them, I remember Austin sat in on the interview with me, and he goes, you know, we're the original Red, and the guy was like, we're not original. Well, he goes, I'm not even original. I'm like number 16. Yeah. We were like, oh my God. And I said, see, there you go. You think it all starts with you, buddy.
Those guys are really nice. I met them at, I think it was PMC 2016. They're so wonderful. Yes.
So, like, aren't they just the nicest, sweetest? I mean, I have these really cool pictures with them, and like we see each other and we just hug, and we don't speak each other's language, but we talk like long conversations, and we hug and kiss and dance, and it's just, they're amazing.
There's a Ranger connection there.
Yes, but they do that with the fans as well. I mean, I just think that they're amazing. I'm telling you, I don't know what it is about Power Rangers. If you wore spandex, there's something good about you.
So, Karen, have you seen any other like seasons outside of Jew Ranger? Have you ever like, you know, explored or looked any at other ones?
I did when I was doing the show with Shout Factory. And we, you know, it was funny because Brian got in touch with me and he goes, you know, me and Andre, we'll do the heavy lifting. You don't have to really know. I just want you to be, you know, sunshine and bright. And I was like, oh, you're so sweet. And I go, but I really want to know. So send me some stuff. So he literally sent me like all these links and all this stuff. And I sat and watched all of it because I just was like, I don't want to be that person who's just sitting there and I have no clue what you're talking about. So I literally, I told myself, you've got to watch at least 5 episodes of each. And I did. I sat there one Saturday and I just watched them. And I encourage anyone if you're into Power Rangers, you should watch this because it's like you're getting a whole nother show. And it's almost like you get it's like you're getting a whole new season of possibilities. And it's really fun to watch, and you'll recognize scenes and you'll recognize footage that was used, but it's used in a completely different way. But I've actually been able to watch some of it, and I liked it a lot.
It's so good because like with TokuSHOUTsu and everything that Shout Factory is doing with the channel that we have on Pluto, it's so cool to finally like get to watch some of these seasons that we don't have normal access to. Like a lot of the Sentai that they have, I think it was Jew Ranger to at the time we're now around like Hurricaneger, which was Ninja Storm, and it's. If you're a fan of this, there's ways to keep up with the new stuff that comes out. You know, you can find, you know, like people that are subbing it and putting it out there so that, you know, you can become a fan and watch this and support it when it finally has the chance. And watching a lot of the seasons since Saban picked it back up with Nickelodeon, they've taken one season and they're kind of going back to the old Mighty Morphin formula where they stretch it into 2 seasons and it goes over 2 years, because there is a little bit of magic that works there by having a cast, you know, extend over 2 years, but that also frees up all these extra seasons that get, you know, skipped or passed up. So
yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Like, people always say, like, how does it feel to be a part of Mighty Morphin? And I always say we had the golden ticket. Like, back then, you know, there's almost 200 episodes of Mighty Morphin. But it takes time for a show to, like, really, like, I mean, it was like you got to know every single character. Every single character had a story arc. Every single character had episodes that were catered to just them. You saw us be, you know, struggle. You saw us be successful. You saw us be heroes. You saw us fall, you know, victim to something. And I just feel like the new seasons, they don't get that opportunity. And I like you said, I'm so glad that they stretch it all out to 2 years. And it's like, you know, you get a good chunk of them just being these characters, because it takes time for people to really fall in love and to you just want to see them go through a journey. You know, that's what a good television show is. If you look at any television show, you really want to see them go through a journey, you know, and it's one of those things where Power Rangers, we had a lot of time. And when we had, like you said, 3 seasons of movie, almost 200 episodes, it's like you knew everyone, you know, and you saw it all. So I always think that's why Mighty Morphin has always stayed so near and dear to everyone's heart, and why I would go back to. What do you go back to? You go back to this where the magic started, you know. I always say they got the party started, so go back to where that, you know, that magic happened, and you know, you can't replicate it, but try to just pull from it, you know. And I hope, like, I love that they've been bringing back, you know, alumni and bringing back people to the show. My only thing is I hope that they write a story or like a 2 or 3 part episode where you're really going to get them. Like, you know, I don't want to just see, oh, these kids are in trouble. These people, you know, the originals show up and then boom, they're in costume and they're all fighting. I want to see an episode where, you know, they're in trouble, they lose their powers, the people, you know, the originals come back, help them out. We all go on a journey together, we all learn, and boom, then we fight it out at the end. You know, like they used to do those 2 or 3 part episodes, and it was great. Like, I just want to see that happen. No, we've been impressed with Brennan and Yoshi for a long time. They'll just, like, you tell them do a handstand, they'll do a handstand on you, or it's just, they're the best. And what I love is that they're just as cool as they are, they're equally as cool as individuals. Like, they're just some of the greatest people to sit and just talk to, and I couldn't be happier that they've taken over the torch of crazy acrobats. But I mean, they remind me a lot of Johnny and Jason Frank, because they were always like doing stuff, and I think you might have heard of the story when we were on the movie where Jason and Johnny were doing a flip on a tree, and they just kept doing it, and it was like this thing, and it was right before we shot the scenes of the rollerblading, and Johnny was supposed to spot Jason Frank, and he didn't really spot him, and Jason fell on his face and like scratched his whole face up, and he was like, if you watch that scene, you'll notice Jason Frank is always in the back. Like, Tommy is always, you can never see, because they had to use a stunt double because his face was scratched up, or he just wasn't. And what was even more hilarious was that he's like one of the best athletes I've ever met. He could not rollerblade. He could not. He was so like falling around, and so me and David Yost always laugh at that, because we were kind of in the front. But if you ever go look at the scene, he's in the very back. You can't even see his face because that wasn't him. Johnny killed the White Ranger for like a week.
It feels like every season there's a ranger trying to kill another one just to kind of get into that spotlight a little more. It's always the one that's, you know, a little bit more forefront than them.
Don't do this at home, kids. That's the moral of the story.
And the Japanese stunt team that comes on, and like even the directors, like one of my personal heroes that I know you know pretty well is Koichi Sakamoto. Like, they bring this sort of newfound level that everybody's always constantly trying to reach, and they're just constantly pushing it up there. Like oh, who was I talking to? But they had their suit actor and their stunt double, who was one of the Japanese crewmen who worked on the original show that they brought over. And he like would always like kind of like circle him and look at him and be like, oh, you're gaining weight. You know, because that means he would have to gain weight. Or he would see that he's like getting super shredded and he's like, no, because I got to go and do that too. What are you doing to me?
Whatever you do, I have to go do too.
So
that's funny.
Outside of Power Rangers, what else has your life sort of led to? Like, I know that you work with a lot of the conventions. It's kind of had this new sort of uprising and everything of meeting these kid fans that, you know, looked up to you and everybody else that was in these shows.
Yeah, you know what? I've been blessed as an actress. I've been able to continue my acting career and hosting career, and I've been able to work for the last 25 plus years, and it's been great. You know, I love taking on new roles. But one of the things that I kind of did was, it's hard for actors who are, you know, minorities. There's not a lot of parts. So I'd gotten to a point where a friend of mine told me, he goes, well, why are you complaining and waiting for parts to come to you? You should start writing your own stuff. And so I did. I started creating. That kind of led me into producing, where I started, you know, writing my own shows and doing my own stuff. And it's almost like now my first thought is, when I'm like, oh, I'd love to be a part of a podcast like that, I'm like, well, why don't you create it? You know? And it's one of those things where I think with the new media and having, you know, Twitch and YouTube and all these other really cool venues, you can shoot your own stuff and you can put it out there into the world. And you don't kind of have to go through the normal motions. So for me, that's been such a blessing. I love it. I love writing it. I love creating shows. Like being in quarantine, I've literally been going, okay, I've got to create a way to, you know, do all the things that I can't do right now, you know, and I've been creating a show, you know, that is kind of like it's kind of like a convention, but it's like a virtual one, you know, where we talk to all the people who are sitting at home, because, you know, we're all still creative and we're all still sitting here. So I've been working on that, and I'm doing a movie. Everyone knows we've been doing a movie where I'm kind of getting a lot of the former cast members together, and it's called The Order, and we've been actually shopping that as a television show, which is really crazy. Like you said, conventions. It's funny because I was telling Nakia Baris, who was the Yellow Ranger who took my place when I left, I was like, you know, why are we just going to these cons? We should have our own show. Yeah. You know, we should invest our own money and we should do our own thing. And that's kind of how we created Ranger Stop and Pop, because I didn't want it to just be Power Rangers. I wanted to be able to invite my anime friends and all of my other friends who go to cons too. And so we created that show in Atlanta, and we had our first show in 2019. And so we were doing Ranger Stop and Pop for 2020, and then coronavirus happened. I know, right? So luckily we were ahead of it enough that we were able to just reschedule our dates for 2021. So we have Ranger Stop and Pop will happen in Atlanta March 5th through the 7th. 2021. So we're super excited about that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to this episode. We've had this great hour of Let's Talk Toku. It's been so fun to connect and just talk about, you know, everything that goes into this. Like, you see this show and there's so much that goes into everything that you see. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, even, you know, Let's Talk Toku, but not on the same scale, of course.
I mean, absolutely. I'm so glad you invited me. I'm so glad that they got in touch with me. This has been so much fun. And yeah, I think it's like, it's such a cool, like, it's fun talking shop, you know?
Definitely.
And I could talk shop all day, obviously. You could tell.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That's all that we have for today. So if you guys, in March, if you're free, come to Atlanta. We're going to go to a Ranger Stop and Pop, and it's going to be a great time. Remember, Chili's. Find
the Rangers at Chili's.
Anyway, that's all that we have for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Karen, thank you so much for being here. We will see you all next time.
Bye.